When I heard about the ruckus in Nevada, the I had a bad feeling. I did not initially write about it because I was under the false hope that it would die. After all, it is an isolated incident. There have been over 40 primaries and convention, and while some have been contentious, they were no different in the past. They were all just fine. It was evident that some wanted to pin a negative narrative about the ruckus as a blanket description of the average Bernie Sanders supporters. Angie Morelli appeared on MSNBC. She was interviewed by Rachel Maddow. She gave an intelligent and articulate interview. The snippet that was used to be representative of the interview sadly maligned Sanders supporters. We will discuss what happened in Nevada and how media manipulation can change reality and affect elections. After watching Angie Morelli's MSNBC interviews, I had two distinct reactions. The first was that finally, there was someone on TV dissecting the false impression of what really occurred. Morelli was there. Morelli had videos. Morelli had the truthful narrative. The second feeling was that I knew MSNBC, who except for a few hosts have become the Bernie Sanders Destruction Network, was going to find the most opportune snippet of Morelli's narrative to deceive the public at large. I heard it as soon as it came out of Angie's mouth. It was at that point I knew the establishment complex was going to work. Morelli said that Bernie Sanders supporters were in confined spaces with little food, but with availability of alcohol. She said it in a context describing it as a minor factor that included disrespect and much more. In fact, her subsequent statements gave the totality of the genesis of the frustration with physical needs just being a non-inhibiting factor. MSNBC used the clip and spread it ad nauseum to promote two distinct narratives. The first is that Bernie Sanders supporters are irresponsible people with little to no self-control. That's what they wanted you to believe, folks. The second was that they were violent. These violent people, what are they trying to do here? They're trying to create that equation. They tried to equate the Bernie Sanders supporters with the Donald Trump supporters. Later on, it was the only clip that Tamron Hall played for Nina Turner, a Sanders surrogate, as she attempted to correct the record as well. It was the clip subsequently used by Rachel Maddow and Chris Matthews. Nothing about what Angie spoke about, the petitions, nothing about going up there to try to get support. It was the clip making the rounds throughout cyberspace. Clips where Morelli points out that many Hillary Clinton supporters were on their side was ignored. Clips where she displayed the petitions that went unresolved were ignored. There is no liberal or conservative media. None. There is corporate media who set the lanes where a specific outcome is willed. It is for this reason independent media must ascend. It is the reason why you must become the media. Angie Morelli is in the fight and doing her part. We must all do so as well. The question is, will you? Folks, while we talk to Angie and move on, remember to give us a call at 713-526-5738. Shannon is going to tell you a little bit of the goodies that we have later on, but let's get to Angie Morelli. Angie, how are you doing this afternoon?
Great. How are you?
So far, so good. First of all, before we even go into any type of questioning, was I accurate? Was I sufficiently accurate in the description that I provided?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you've done a great job.
Okay.
I'm pretty impressed with everything you've written up and everything on this, and I appreciate that there are journalists out there that are reporting on this correctly.
Well, let me tell you what is very important, and it actually, I don't get excited or anything, but after watching the interview and after watching what occurred on MSNBC, that's why, for all practical purposes, I went all over trying to get in touch with you, because I thought this is how it's done. It is amazing. It's not, people think about right wing, left wing, and all that kind of stuff. We don't even have to go that far to see what is actually done with a narrative to destroy. But anyway, I tell you what, I think our listeners some of them may not be abreast of exactly what occurred in Nevada. So let me first ask you to go ahead and tell us What occurred at that great Democratic convention in, I think it was Las Vegas, Nevada?
Yes, Las Vegas, Nevada.
What happened?
Well, I mean, I've been forced to retell this story multiple times over the last week, and I have not found a succinct and precise way of exactly explaining what happened in any short form whatsoever, but I'll try again right now. So we had a disastrous caucus February 20th, which was put on by our state party. And we all realized at that point that maybe we should have some doubts about how this election is going to end up shaking out for the state of Nevada. Then a couple months later, we went into, on April 2nd, our county convention. And at our county conventions, they were ran by the county parties, but those also did not have many redeeming qualities that should have brought us back into trusting our local parties. Once we saw this and once we saw what happened there, that's when the group of us that have been organizing for Bernie for the better part of the last year around my table here in Nevada, the grassroots organization that is, we decided to get together, and we had a couple different groups going, trying to figure out, A, how to organize this convention for our neighbors, make sure that their needs are met, make sure that they have all the correct information, make sure they all know how to vote on, these rules, and also put forward people that we thought would be good for some of these positions that were up for election locally. And then another group of us went ahead and started on trying to decipher these rules that were coming out for the convention. And once we got a set of the rules, we realized how egregious and draconian they were. And we initially tried to get the state party to reconsider these rules and the executive board to reconsider these rules before we went into the convention. We had thousands of signatures on an online petition for this. We were ignored. And the next thing that happened was they changed the filing date for people who could apply for the executive board. And they cut the amount of time that you could apply in half. We thought that they were not very transparent about how this happened. We actually found a couple Nevada state codes or Nevada state laws that they were in violation of. So we sued the party. Myself and 8 other people sued the Nevada State Democratic Party leading up to the actual convention, trying to get them to simply reverse this change deadline that they put upon us. And we lost in court that Friday morning before the convention, and I think one of the most glorious ways possible. But after that happened, we went into the convention. Of course, considering they only had volunteers showing up 1 hour before the convention started, the convention registration was very late. We had people standing in line for hours. So people were already frustrated by the next morning once we got there. And my team, we had assembled 9 different petitions that we wanted to circulate, get signed, and have motions on. And some of these petitions, they had nothing to do with what would have been the outcome of the convention that day. They primarily dealt with the procedural rules that we thought were going to be a problem at the convention. And looking back on these petitions now, if any one of these things would have been accepted and voted on and approved, we could have had a much more peaceful day on Saturday. But throughout the rest of the day, we had all the requisite signatures we needed. We actually had double. They refused to accept our petitions. They refused to listen to any motions from the floor. We were clearly winning voice votes, and they were ruling against us from the stage. And these are all the things that preceded, the dramatic moment that the mainstream media keeps showing the same 2 seconds of, towards the end of the convention. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Now, what they attempted to do, Angie, is apparently there was somebody who picked up a chair, and they were trying to turn that into a violent event. But before I even ask that question, I want to ask it this way. Did anybody leave that building with blood on their heads, their hands, or anywhere else?
No, and you know what?
Yeah, wait, let me finish. I know what you're going to say, but I want to ask it this way first, and then I'm going to ask you to elaborate. Did anybody there leave with a punch in their face?
No.
Did anybody there leave with a swollen hand, swollen anything?
No.
Okay. How do you define violence?
That's a question that I keep on asking everyone too. I mean, I would define violence as somebody, forcibly putting their hands on somebody else to
that's what I thought.
Cause some harm.
I honestly thought that was a definition of violence. And let me ask you something, and I'm not going to ask you to say this, but I am going to say this. And let me tell you why. As somebody who studied the mechanics of politics for decades, one of the things that I understand is how narratives get created. In other words, all along, everything has been peaceful with Bernie Sanders rallies and all these other issues. But when you're at the end of a convention and you want to create a narrative, you have to look for anything where you can get somehow the semblance of something wrong occurring. And this was the best that they could get. And that's why I think they turned on the motion, both from the establishment corporate media, both from the narrative writers, both from the way, I don't know if you saw the interview between Nina Turner and Tamron Hall. I love Tamron Hall, but I was completely disappointed in the way that she addressed Nina Turner. It's not that you shouldn't be strong in your comments, but it was quite evident that she was working on bad information, and also there wasn't anybody in Nina's voice. Nina was there for 8 hours, and your voice, you were there for 15 hours, weren't there to refute it.
Right.
And that was the major concern that I had. So my question to you then, going back to what occurred in that room. I understand as well that many of the Hillary Clinton supporters actually saw y'all's point of view. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Hillary Clinton campaign, so we had released the information about these petitions and explained them in detail to all the people who came to the Bernie Sanders meeting that preceded the convention. And we knew that as soon as we put that information out, it was going to go out to everyone. But what ended up happening was that the Hillary Clinton campaign, I think it was 2 nights before the convention, the Hillary Clinton campaign put out an email to their delegates telling them not to sign any petitions. And that was a very strong stance on coming from a campaign that has previously been complaining about, our Bernie Sanders campaign here, getting mixed up in some of our politics, which I don't think they have, from my point of view. And I think that, they ended up the next day having a young gentleman out front with big signs saying, "Do not sign any petitions." So I sent a couple of my volunteers up to him, and I was like, "Hey, can you list one thing that any of these petitions are about?" And they didn't even know.
Right.
So what happened was that in the middle of this, whatever they saw, that we were really at the front of this room for hours trying to get them to accept our petitions. Finally, we started having Hillary people come up to us and they're like, "Can you tell us what's on these?" And I was like, "Sure." So I sat there and I explained to every single person that came up to me. And once they realized what was on these petitions, they were angry.
Right, they wanted to sign it. Exactly. Let me say something, and that's where we talk about. I hear a lot about the pundits on TV talk about wanting party unity. And what is amazing, I find, is that you can't ask for party unity when you're not giving people a voice.